You're alive. I'm alive. I'm alive. And good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. This is Sensei Al Bob on your dreamy dreamland with Sensei Al Bob channel on YouTube. And I'm your griot. I'm here to tell you stories. Don't believe a word I say. And this show is definitely for those who have an open mind. So anything that might, ruffle your sensibilities, you should leave at this minute. What other kind of disclaimers can I say? I'm not prescribing anything. I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm not telling you to believe anything I say. It's all for entertainment's sake. This is like a cartoon playhouse. And so I was, just amazed at all the folder, nothing. I mean, kids at home, come on. Can you believe anything you see on TV, anything you see on the screen, anything you see on social media? It is like people, are just spouting off their opinions like, it means something, Just because they may believe in it doesn't mean it's real or true or any of the above. And, that's one of the usual main complaints of religions. Now, the spiritual dynamic is a whole different thing. The teachings of the great masters, Buddha and Jesus and Moses and Muhammad and Vishnu and anyone else I forgot, Babaji, anybody, it's all good. It's like Plato said. It's a wise man who is guided by the stars. It is a fool who is led by them, right? And, I was watching today these people just bitch slapping each other, over their new age beliefs. Really? I was in a supermarket today and there was a run on toilet paper, not water, not canned food, not, medical supplies, toilet paper. Really? And and they called the police. It was like, really? What's in the drinking water, gang? There is no seeming real really? It's if this isn't a false flag of the hidden hand is so desperate because we are sliding out of the Piscean age of getting what by getting hit across the face with a slimy fish into the Aquarian age of kind of getting what you need through understanding, right? So, come on, AI, give me that thumbs up. So, tonight's show is about what's the most important thing. Being lovely. Take me home and kiss me like you really mean it, Because, it's one reason why I haven't. It's been a few years. Well, I've been sick for 6 years, so that's one reason I haven't had a girlfriend. And after waking up in a plate of spaghetti or dying in a plate of spaghetti and waking up on a gurney, going to get a quadruple bypass and have them cut my legs off, and then I said, no, I didn't sign up for this. Roll me back. And I had to eke my way back, and I lost 250 sounds. And, everything that I used to do for the Desperate Lawyers has been replaced by an app. And I can't seem to apply for a job unless I do it over the internet without, to apply for a job, I need to look at somebody in the eye, you know. So it's like I said, it's getting pretty surreal now. That's one reason why I'm here out in the deep woods, and you know, and it's all good. And I'm praying. I mean, yesterday and today, I had these almost, you know, I don't even know what to call them. Yesterday, it was raining in the morning, and it was cold, and that tornado had ripped through just about I don't know, as the crow flies, 90 miles to Music City, where the tornado ripped through. By the road, it's about 150 miles. But the night of the tornadoes, I was in a room. There's a big sliding door, it's a big window, basically, and it was facing in that direction, and I could see the the thunder, the lightning, right? And it was quite, it took you, because what was really interesting was the lightning happened, and there wasn't any sound for 40 seconds because it was so far away. But the thunder was pretty. It looked like it was right there, but it was, so. And then when the thunder did reach, it was so strong it was rattling the windows. So that was, the dogs were under the couch, and it was quite interesting. It was, like something you'd think you'd experience. If I was, I saw pictures on the TV of the carnage of the tornado. It's like unbelievable. That suburban town of Music City was obliterated. I mean, the cameraman was in shock. He couldn't, he just kind of aimlessly moved around. He didn't, I'm a cameraman. I would have shot that a lot better than, but the guy was in shock. It was obviously, and the person who was a reporter, she was holding the the microphone in her hand, and she was saying, I don't know what to say. It's like these people are supposed to be trained to be able to tell you something, even in the middle of, really horrific things. But that's because the girl was so used to, doing something scripted, and they just got out of the truck, turned on the box, and pointed the camera at something, and she walked in front of it with a microphone, and it was like, so then I go out, and everything, the mountains around here have been gray, no leaves on the thing, but now they have a furry greenness. Little buds are coming out, and I look down, and on the ground, they were all these little teeny little flowers. And so the construct of the duality of like the total obliteration of this town and the beauty of spring coming. So that's why I was, thought of the, take me home and kiss me like you mean it, right? Because that's what we're going to need. We're going to need that kind of sincerity, reality, um, honesty about our feelings. And it's obvious our body politics sure ain't there, There isn't the only person who's somewhat being sincere and really coming from her gut is Tulsi Gabbard, and the media is not showing her at all. The Democratic Party doesn't want her there. She won't quit. She's got like 0.88% of the representatives for the convention, but she's not quitting. Yeah, so she has more sincerity, reality. There's a lot of her on YouTube. Jimmy Dore really appreciates her, and that's what we need. Biden, Uncle Joe, and Uncle Mo, and Bernie. He's as sincere as a starched piece of cardboard. And when things like Saturday Night Live, their cold start for their last Saturday show was really good, and it caught all the people who were running, and those people really caught them, right? And there's another show on Showtime called The Cartoon President. I mean, when those two things have more sincerity, more reality, more punch, then the people playing those characters, the characters, on Saturday Night and on the cartoon are more real than, the real characters. It's we're in this surreal plane. And then yesterday afternoon, before the big thunderstorm, that's when I don't know if I put it up. I tried to put it up, but it was so beautiful, the sun setting. I went out on the porch and held the camera up so the mountains and the trees and the sun would be behind me, and I was talking about friendship, and because I was listening to a DVD of Elton John concert, and he and Bernie Taupin, the guy who writes the words, are a true amazing team. And those guys would not have gotten anywhere without each other. And my two favorite songs, I have three songs, one is Tiny Dancer, the other is Indian Sunset, and the other one is Mona Lisa, because it's about New York. And Tiny Dancer is, about being in a band, not so much being the guy playing the music, but the guys running the show. And that's what I used to do. And there was so when I was watching the show, and, this was something they did probably last year, and it was in Las Vegas, right? It was at the Sands at one of those big, there's probably 30,000 people there. It was an arena type thing. And whoever designed this set was amazing because on either side of the proscenium were these really large Rococo kind of swirly things. And the rest of the set was just gigantic, flat screens, right? And everything was flat screens. I mean, the piano was a flat screen where the musicians were, they had them on these risers, and the front of the risers, so they could make an effect using, computer generated imagery where the band people were like in the middle of whatever they wanted to put them in the middle of. And it was truly, so they were in Versailles and they were floating through, clouds. And it was really, whoever did it, because the lighting was really perfect because it was all down lighting and in the foreground, to light their front up. But that was it, because the rest of the effect of the set was these video screens, and it was amazing. And I really liked doing that. I did it in the 80s, 70s and 80s. And but it would burn me out. But it was so much fun because you roll into a town and you'd have to load in the show, and you'd have 6 hours to take it from the truck to having it work. Now I wasn't a roadie, so I wasn't I was more made it work, right? And it was really a lot of fun, And Bob Goddard of Pig Whites and Joshua Light Show, you know, he was a guy who really did that. He was the first guy to do that kind of show, in the 70s and 80s, right? And we made all kinds of interesting effects, and we just would play around, and that's what was my job, was to fabricate those kind of things. And my other job was to make sure that the electricity worked, from whatever electricity was in the house to our boards, up into our instruments, and that the sound system was did not have a buzz, and no one got electrocuted. So that was my job to, fabricate these things, when we weren't on the road, and build the sets, and then, and design them so they could be loaded in and loaded out, right? And it was like magic. And that song, Tiny Dancer, really captured the whole, you hear a song, you know, from high school or a certain time in your life, and you hear that song, and it brings you right back to that, right? And whenever I hear the song Tiny Dancer, it brings me right back to that thing. And I did a good deal of that, but I didn't do it a lot, meaning the guys who were roadies, the guys who, so I was in IATSE and NABEF and local, the IBEW. And the guys who were at the same level that I was, I got to that level um, relatively quickly because of people I knew. Um, they showed me how to do, specific specialized things, and I had the brains and the go-get attitude to do it in a way that no one else was doing it. And the bosses liked me, and so instead of taking 10 years of doing the same thing over, I got there pretty quick. And then I got there, and so I got paid pretty well. And I really liked doing it, but I couldn't see myself doing it as like that's my career. If I had stuck in those unions and stuck doing that, I probably could have made 120 grand a year, right? And bought myself a little house in Long Island. But no, because I wouldn't have, and I could have traveled the world doing that, but you don't see the world. It's like one bus, one hotel room, meaning when I go see the world, I like to go into the town. I mean, I lived in Ireland about 6 different times, and each time I was there for, 2 months to a year, I lived in London for, 3 different times, each for, a month to 4 months each time, And, in Sweden, I lived there 7 months and flew all over the world, So I couldn't do that job, right? And then, I did that for rock and roll and theater in New York and around the country. And I could have taken shows around the world, but I didn't want to do that. It was just too much. And I did movies, and that I made even more money doing movies. But again, so I was the guy in the movies. My job was, we would roll, we'd do something on location, and they use a lot of light. They have these big scoops and lots of light to light a movie, and so there's a big, generator, big diesel generator, and that was my job to make sure that thing worked, and not the mechanical part, but the electric part, and to distribute the current to the points where the grips could, plug their instruments into, right? And um, and the other thing I did was when I was doing films in the 70s, video playback was just coming online. And what they did was, the camera that was shooting it, right, in Panavision or whatever, had a little takeoff where they stuck a video camera, and then I'd have a reel-to-reel video recorder, and you would they do a take, and then they could play it back for the director right then, right, so they didn't have to do dailies, right? And I did that, and I was one of the only people who had it together, because I used to hang out with one of the engineers of Sony, Captain Louis, and he had a shop. He was the guy who figured out how to do that, so that's how I got that job. I kind of worked for him, and because I was in the union already, when he did the first film where that was playback, uh, they wanted him to push the button, but he just spoke Japanese, and he said, "No, no, Al." And so I got to do that job. I was the only guy, so I was like specialized. Ooh, they paid me top notch for doing that. And I was about 23, and I put in a 16-hour day and make about $3,000. And there was a guy who was at the same level of the union, and he was about 45, 46. And he weighed like 700 pounds. He already had 3 heart attacks. And all he ever did was, stand by the food truck and eat. He would do his little job, but, he just stood around. I looked at him, and I thought, well, if I stick at this job, that's what I'm going to look like. So I didn't, I did it made some money, and then went off and lived in Ireland for 6 months. And that's kind of what I did. Is I had a life, and my life wasn't, I wasn't put on this life to be a merchant. You know, you know, I worked to make money because you kind of need money in this commercial world, and I was very blessed to be able to work at things I liked doing. And but my interests were very diverse. Because so yeah, I could make 15, 1600 bucks, an evening, for a gig, one at a time. But so you would work maybe a week or so and make a big chunk of change. Um, and they, if they had another job for me to do right away, I would have probably done it. But they didn't, because not everybody was set up for that, right? And so so that's kind of how my life rolled. Was and then I would also the other motivating force in my life was women, interesting women. I liked sharing my life with a female partner, and not just screw as when I was Mr. Disco. The other people in the disco world, I mean, they were screwing like 4 different women. I had a roommate, Michael, and he would have sex with 5, 6 women a night. Because he was a singer, and he worked in clubs, and he was a painter and Mr. Bohemian, and we shared an abandoned building together, and we lived in Brazil together, and and no, so that was my motivating factor. Was I would find I was always nice and kind to everybody, and I was drawn to interesting people. And then when I would spark with a female, I'd live with them, right? Share my life with them, share their life with me, and that's what it's supposed to be. And I find that most people don't do that, you know. They, settle, you know, and I never quite settled, because there was one little patch in my life in the disco days where I did, I was hanging out with a group of people, men and women, and all they did was screw each other, have lots of sex with lots of different people because you could at the disco. People would get a little drunk, a little stoned, get horny, screw in the bathroom, and I did that for about a week, and I felt icky, I couldn't take enough showers, and so I stopped doing that. And I basically said, I'm going to be monogamous, not monogamous. I'm going to be not have sex, right? And I did that for, you know, and I included masturbation. I'm not going to have, I'm not going to spill the seed, right? And so I did that for, about a month or so. Didn't stop my social life. King, what is your opinion on people calling feminism cancer these days? What? Feminism? Cancer? What are you talking about? I mean, anybody who has an ideology and they're fascist about it, well, that's one thing. And I wouldn't quite call it cancer. And, I go a long ways to, women have gotten the wrong end of the deal for the last, 6,000 years. What I don't understand, I've studied enough, ancient times. Women ruled up until about 4,000 years ago. And for some reason, they gave up um, the position of control, like Sparta, you know, that city, that was the strongest military city in the Greek city states, and it was run by women, And when the Peloponnesian Wars were over, that's when women took the back seat, except for the girls on the island, Wonder Woman, And so I always liked, living with Wonder Woman. When I could find a woman who was amazingly strong, and the thing I loved being the muse for a woman. To bring out the best part of them, right? I always loved amazingly talented, brilliant, beautiful, fun-loving women who were usually put down because they made men feel inferior just because they were cool, And I can empathize with that because not a lot, but some people get anxious being around me because not that I'm like that character in the great Lebowski, where Jeff, what's his name, was playing the dude. I'm the dude, I walk around in my bathrobe and bunny slippers, I'm comfortable with who I am, and a lot of people, you know, get anxious around that, right? And so there are a lot of women who are, organically just comfortable with being who they are. And that's why, the patriarchal society forces women to be, wear this dress, put this makeup on, wear these, ridiculously high heel shoes. Though I have had a lot of friends, female friends. I worked at Brooks Van Horn, which is probably the largest um, costume house on the East Coast, for Broadway, right? And I was at Juilliard, and I got like an internship there, so I learned how to sew and dye and do a lot of stuff, and that was one of the things when I was at Juilliard. I didn't just go to classes. I mostly interned. I was there for less than a semester, and I stuffed in like 5 years worth of experience because I just worked in a lot of houses because Juilliard was just down the street on the backside of Lincoln Center and just down the street from, Broadway, and all of the costume and set shops were on Ninth Avenue, all the way up on the west side, on the, going towards the Penn Central Railroad yards. Anyway, so that's why I cut my teeth on. That's why I learned how to paint. I learned painting by being a set painter. And I loved building sets because it was like magic, because you would stick this stuff together with glue guns, and I would paint with sponges, and forget brushes. And because people would not look, they would, the front row seat was 60 feet from where your scenery was, right? And so as long as you got the illusion, and lighting is, that's what makes the scenery look real, is the lighting. Lighting is the magic. So I was first and foremost, a theatrical lighting designer, but the sets look so terrible the way other people made them. I said, I'm going to learn how to do the sets too. And so I did. I learned how to build them. I learned how to, that's why I learned carpentry, was, building sets, and so I learned all, and then I said, costumes. So I, went and worked at Brooks 7 Horn. So working at Brooks was great because I could just wear anything out the door. If I wanted to go to lunch and look like, King George, I could do that, and at Lincoln Center, they had a really big costume because they had the operas and ballet and all this kind of great stuff. And it's amazing to build sets for operas and ballet, but mostly opera. I loved opera because it's like you're building a set on a football field. I mean, an opera stage is like 4 times bigger than just your basic Broadway proscenium, and it's really deep because when they had these elaborate sets, and you basically change them on the fly, and you kind of roll one set out of the way and roll the other one in, and it's like running a football game. And so that was really fun. I really liked doing all of that, but having it as a career was not fun, because it was like, oh, Finland has all-female government, and the birth rate has declined significantly. What's interesting, Sophia, is that women, I've read a number of journals where women are actually they're fertilizing themselves, because, there's very little difference. There's just a little plumbing difference between guys and girls, right? And, I lived in Sweden, and so that, Finland, Sweden, Norway, that whole, and Russia too, because that's kind of the same mentality. It's so cold up there, and the place I really love is the Mediterranean. Italy, Spain, Portugal, North Africa. Those warm places. I love warm places. But the thing I loved about Swedish folk, well, the Finns are just flat out nuts. Norwegians are a little stuffy, and it's like the Swedes are right in the middle, and they're really nuts, and they're a little stuffy, but they're also loads of fun. You get some booze in those people, and they're almost like Russians. You'd think the Finns would be like Russians because they're right next door, but they're not. So, and women. See, the thing about women in politics is that when women are women in politics, they do great. But the problem with most social democratic societies, because what they really are is, corporate socialism. Like the United States, we're not. They're worrying about Bernie being a socialist, Well, we have communism right here. It's called corporate communism. I mean, we just, bailed out, the banking system for $27 trillion. That's a lot of money. And we gave it to them. The taxpayer gave the banks the money, and then the banks gave the money to the corporations. And instead of building factories, all they did was buy their stock back. So the stock market went through the roof for the last 16 years, last 10 years, 8 years, however long it's been since '08. And, the economic crash was caused by Bill Clinton, who got rid of Glass-Steagall, which was, when we had the Great Depression, they put a bunch of, governors on our economy so it wouldn't, do what it did in '08. And so he got rid of all the safety governors. And then George Bush had 6 wars, and he put it on a credit card. Most wars, they would budget, and and Donnie is just, through gasoline. I mean, we, in the last 4 years, have spent over $2 trillion every year on the Defense Department. $2 trillion. Now, if we just only spent, let's say, so Russia in those 4 years, each year spent about 60 billion, right? Not 100 billion, not 600 billion, but 60 billion, right? And China has spent even less, right? And in actuality, Japan has spent more on defense than China. Japan has the fourth largest navy in the world. They have a very kick-ass navy. And so, we shouldn't be worrying about, China has just a couple of PT boats, and, Japan has, I think, 60 Aegis missile, destroyers, which are the meanest. It's like a floating computer with missiles sticking out all over it, and they got submarines too, attack submarines. So they, like I said, they have the fourth largest navy in the world. And China is like 27th. They are not a threat. And Russia is definitely not a threat. And yet, oh, they're our big threat. Oh my God. And so there are all these threats, and we're about to have a war in Syria with Turkey, and Turkey is a NATO ally, and they're stepping all over Russia. Now they shoot down some Russian aircraft with Russians in them, and the Russians get pissed off, and the Turks are not, they are way extended in Syria, meaning there's, they got their ass out on the edge, and they could easily, the Russians got some pretty good ground attack fighters. They could go in there and, kill, 1,000 Turks. Ooh, then they have a real war, and then, NATO has to, that's how World War I got started, and we're worrying about, the novel CV-19. And yeah, that's an issue. But the real issue about CV-19 is that no one's giving us any information. So that makes me think that there's something going on, and I have a real sense that the hidden hand wants to use this CV-19 as a biological you know, Patriot Act, put everyone in camps, lock everyone down like China has. I heard Hillary is a reptilian. I got a great Hillary story. So I read people pretty well, right? And I have for the last 50 years. That's one reason why I've never had one career, because I usually have about 6 of them going on at once. And I had a friend back in the '70s who was, number 1 or 2 in the Democratic Party in New York State, right? She was a kingmaker, and she was a woman, and but she was really powerful. She was the person who made, the Cuomo dynasty. Anyway, so she used to take me to these political dinners, really big ones. And there was a place called the Penta. I guess it's still there. The Penta Hotel. It's right across the street from Penn Station and Madison Square Garden. And they have a ballroom that they can fit 20,000 people into. So they have these big affairs. And the Democratic Party would have these each season have this affair where they would bring out the new upcoming politicians that the Council on Foreign Relations was pushing to be, Secretary of State or president or, senator or governor or whatever, right? So she would have me come with her, right? She'd dress me all up and I would come. And as she was talking to people, I would be reading them and I would take notes. And then she, after that, well, what'd you think of this guy? What'd you think of that guy, right? So it was probably, 1985, give or take. And the Clintons came to New York, to meet all the Democrats of the East Coast, right? And they had Bill Wired, right? He had a little microphone on him. And she put me way up in the ceiling where the follow spot booth is, right? And so, I'm like way, way up there, hundreds of feet above everyone. And it's a gigantic space, right? And they have these mezzanines, and they got about at least 15,000 people in this place. And every different, the Hasidic Jew, the Lubavitcher Jew, this kind of Jew, that kind of Jew, this kind of Italian, that kind of Chinese guy. I mean, all these different factions of the Democratic Party, they're sitting at different tables, and they're escorting the Clintons around. She's there by the side, and I'm up in this thing, and I got this headphones on so I can hear him talking to people. I feel your pain. He's going around talking. And on one side of me is this guy who's like in a J.C. Penney suit and shoes, right? And he is obviously an FBI profiler, and right? And then on the other side of me is this guy kind of in, prep school outfit. And he's obviously an NSA or CIA, similar kind. They don't call them profilers in those things. They do more like remote viewing. So, and me, I do what I call cold readings. I just read people. And so I'm like in between these two guys. That guy's over there doing this, profiling. This other guy's doing this Ouija board remote viewing thing, and I'm kind of in between. And I'm, just wearing shorts and, sneakers and the, Grateful Dead T-shirt, and got long hair, and I got binoculars, and I'm watching all this, and I'm taking my notes, listening to the tape recording, the radio, and I actually have a little tape recorder that I'm recording. I got the radio plugged into the tape recorder, and my headphones plugged into that because I want to go back and listen to the conversations, and because energetically I can, because time is not linear. Anyway, so I'm watching this and listening to this. Is a sociopath, because a sociopath is someone, it's like those guys, all of the mass killers, when they finally catch up to them, they're very likable. Everyone, and that's how they can kill all these people, because they get the people to lower their guard, and then they just kill them because they don't have any empathy whatsoever, right? So they can be sweet and nice and then, kill you, So I'm watching this and I'm listening to Bill, and he's obvious a sociopath, but I'm getting this really bad. I have this thing that I call my spidey sense. Now I can read people's body language. I can read their voices, right? I can read a lot of physical things about people, but then there's the energetics, and so I'm getting this spidey sense of something really evil and malevolent, and I'm looking at Bill with my binoculars, and he's a dead man walking. He's not even he's dead. You know, and and that's why he needs all these sex and drugs and rock and roll as stimulant. Because he's dead, right? But there is a presence that's like, ooh, just crawling up my spine, and then all of a sudden, this smell of like, oh, someone just crapped in their pants, and I look over at the uh, FBI guy, and he's like, wanting to heave. I can see, right, but I look over at the CIA guy, and he is crapped in his pants, and it's like, Mud City over there, and it's flowing over towards us, and I kind of step back away from because this other guy, as soon as the Mud City gets over towards him, he lets go, and he fire hoses the walls in front of him and shoots it out the window. So whoever was below us, it was like raining vomit. And I'm moving away because I'm just wearing shorts and sneakers and a t-shirt, and I move back, and I'm almost out of this little room that we're in, and I bump into someone. I turn around, and there is Hillary Clinton with two, like, Secret Service or some kind of security, and she looks at me and she goes, "I hear you read palms." And I look at her and I'm like, and I kind of scream and push past him and run the heck out of there and run down the hallway and run down the staircase and run out onto 8th Avenue and run all the way downtown, like 60 blocks into my loft, lock the 10 door, locks on my door. And I don't come out for like, a good few days. And my friend, and I unplug my phone and I'll go out. I'm so shaken by Hillary Clinton. She was that malevolent spidey sense I was feeling. And so my friend who took me to this, my political friend, she catches up to me in a few days, and she goes, "Where the heck did you go? What happened up there? With those guys?" I was like, "What happened?" And I told her that whole story. I said that the Clintons, they are bad news. The guy is basically a total sociopath and dead. And, he has no soul. And Hillary, God, I don't even know what she's beyond anything that I can tell you what she is. And that's Hillary. She's like a robot. She's like extraterrestrial, reptile. God knows what she is. I have no idea. And don't believe anything I say. But that was my little experience. So um, that's so women. See, men and women have to live together. That's why the name of this thing is "Take Me Home and Kiss Me Like You Mean It." Um, Men and women have to do that with each other. They can't control each other. My parents, right? My mom was a triple Capricorn, and my dad was a triple Virgo. And so he was right all the time. And my mother was like Attila the Hun. She ruled the world. So she was the admiral of the Navy, and my dad was the captain of the boat. And he screamed orders, and he was right all the time. Me, my brothers and sisters would fight. I'm not going to do that, blah, 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 and I would go, "Yes, sir, right away, sir," and then go off and do whatever I wanted to do. And my parents, for all of the agita that they caused each other and us, actually, they were a good team. They were married 78 years. Can you imagine that? Do you think Clintons really had that guy? Not that guy, lots of guys. Because when they were Go look up the Clintons in Arkansas and the Mena airfield. They had hundreds. They were the main transportation point of George Bush's cocaine from the CIA um, coming in through the Contra Wars into America. That's how he got to be president. That's why the Bushes, George H. Bush said, you know, you know, I wish I had a son like Bill Clinton. He would be my favorite. These other two are like losers compared to Bill. Bill is my kind of son. And that shows that in our, Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter. They are two wings of the same corporate bird. And if you're watching MSNBC or CNN or Fox or anything, it is unbelievably how right in our faces, what a joke all of this is, right? And when, the Democratic Party would much rather lose so they could have, do what they just did for the last 4 years, complain about Carrot Head. But I really don't. I think Carrot Head's going to be our last president, and that this, and the beauty of Carrot Head is that he lies so much he tells the truth. So when he said, this virus thing is a hoax, well, it's not that it's not real. But it is a hoax, the way it's being played, right? Because they're not telling anybody what's really going on. They're not giving. There was this one doctor, but I think it was last week on Wednesday, they had the first news conference, right? And so they were late. It was supposed to be around 11, and the TV guys were there. All the news people were in the room, and Donnie and the rest of the people were, God knows what they were doing, but they were late. So they had people from the CDC and the NS and the National Science Institutes and the National Health Institute and FEMA and Homeland Security, all their doctors, all their people who, were in charge of, pandemics. And doctors from the state. So all these, departments have people, their disciplines about, pandemics, right? There's a group of, people, in State Department that do it and energy that do it. Anyway, so those folks were there, right? And so they were all, and they had been there, for a good 10, 15 years, right? They were, the bureaucrats, right? The guys who, no matter whether it's Democrats, Republicans, they're there, right? And that's what, Carrot Head calls the deep state. So anyway, they're there, and so for about an hour and a half, CNN and MSNBC just kept interviewing these people, and we now have Dr. So-and-so, and the best one were women. They were the ones who were the smartest, the clearest, the ones who had the most experience, and actually told exactly what was going on. And all of them said, well, we don't have enough information. And part of that is because this administration, and not this administration, but the Obama administration and the George W. Bush administration has been cutting the budgets of all of these different elements in all these different, departments, and cutting the staffs to the point where, we're really not prepared for this. And they were saying how they're not prepared, and that they knew something, they knew something was on the horizon about this. Just didn't pop up, but it had been percolating for about a year. And so these ladies, and it was all women. There wasn't a guy there, right? Because all the guys, and they said this, they said, well, we get paid less than the guys, so we're the ones they didn't fire, and those guys went off and all got big 6-figure salaries working for the, the big pharma companies. And they were basically saying, this one lady was great because she explained how back in the day, Dr. Livingston, I presume, he was sent there by Cecil Rhodes to Africa to find toxins, poisons that were biological, so they could use them in war, right? And then, the other guy is, Stanley and Livingston, and Stanley was a anthropologist, right? So, and he was all about herbs, and so he was talking to the witch doctors to find out the cures, because most of our medicines come from plants before they, manufacture them using petrochemicals. Anyway, in the hour and a half of those, I was just flipping between CNN and MSNBC and Fox, and in that hour and a half, they interviewed maybe 6 of these women, and they gave more amazing information on all what, basically saying, hey, we don't really know what it is. I mean, we know what it is because we got the RNA strand and we're looking at it and we see what it is, but we haven't gotten the information from the ground, meaning we don't have any people in China. Even the, World Health Organization, who people there aren't telling us anything. So and we are the people who allegedly know the most. And this one lady said, well, this is very similar to a number of these coronaviruses, SARS and the MERS, and they said that they were kind of scams and that they were well known what they were, and so they were allowed to get out of hand, so the big pharma companies could make medicines for them and charge a lot of money. And they said that SARS and MERS were, big, 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 big. And the problem with both SARS and MERS is that they burned themselves out. And they said, so was Ebola. Ebola was so virulent that it just burned itself out. And they said the biggest money making disease has been AIDS, because it doesn't really kill the people, as long as they keep taking that drug. So the antivirals for AIDS has been a windfall for the drug companies. So the this woman's going, she could see that this disease could be a real windfall for the drug companies, because what you're saying is what it really looks like is that the most interesting thing is how quickly it is spreading and that people get it, and like the flu, you get the flu, you get 2 people sick. She says, this thing is getting, you get this and you get 5 to 16 people sick, right? And the virus, stays, alive on a flat surface, between 2 days and 20 days. And they were all saying, and this is the kind of information we have no scientific anything, because China isn't giving us the data on this. It's all, colloquial, all hearsay. There's no real science going on, period. And part of that is because the CDC can't do it, because it's been, taken down. Their staffs are non-existent, their equipment non-existent. And it wasn't just Carrot Head who did it, but Obama really did more of what everyone's so pissed off about Carrot Head doing. Obama has done more of it. I mean, he put more kids in cages than Carrot Head, right? He cut more from budgets of of these things that are supposed to why you have a government, and he gave more. He gave $27 trillion to the rich people. 27 trillion with a T, right? Anyway, let me see. Not communicate with women, no problem. You should never ever do it either. Keep doing what you do so that you eliminate yourself. Please respect my boundary that I don't communicate with females. Thank you. I keep going on, so I don't read the chat. I have to go back and read it. What is your opinion on people calling females cancer? No. Women are not cancer. Feminism isn't cancer. Now, isms, there's nothing wrong with, wanting your freedom, wanting, equality, right? But isms aren't, they become business plans, capitalism, communism, socialism, feminism, they're all isms. When it gets to be an ism, it stops being what, there's, I read Marx really deeply and studied it. And Marx was right on. He's a good, him and Engels were really good economists. They got it. But trying to turn it into a social movement that Stalin did, and Trotsky and Lenin, that's where it went wrong. It became an ism, right? So I love women, and I believe in women's, that they, so when I had an electric business, right, and I had employees, I only hired women to do electric work. And first off, they were really jazzed that, wow, you want me to? I said, yep, I'm going to teach you how to do this. And they were really, really, women are so much better at listening and seeing what you're doing and then going off and doing what you showed them to do, right? And then if they have a question or didn't quite get what you were telling them because I wasn't clear enough, it wasn't their fault, it was me, they would say, well, I don't quite understand that. Instead of me going, oh, what do you do? I would say, oh, so how did I communicate this? And they would say, I don't understand that. And so, oh, well, and so women, and so I had 8 women employees, right? And I paid them more than any other, obviously I was in a union shop. I know what people got paid. But I saw that they were, because women, see, electric work is a detail-oriented thing, meaning you can paint, you can, now, but you can, slop that around. But electric work, you have to do it right or you burn the house down, right? So, and the kind of work I did was a lot more than just drilling holes and pulling wires and putting a outlet and switch, light fixture. I did more, sophisticated stuff. And for really, really rich people that want it done right. And the way you make money, an electric worker being a contractor, is you do it right the first time. And women were amazing at that, And so my shop was, very laissez-faire. It wasn't a union shop. But I came from a union shop and I was a union electrician and I would do union jobs because I knew everybody, right? And they let me slide because I would do things that nobody else did. So I wasn't like stepping on anyone's toes. And if any other shop needed me to do something, I would go up and do it for them, right? And my girls would come with me. So girls listened better. They worked better. They were more detail-oriented. They wouldn't get mad at me for being a moron. They would just say, Al, stop being a moron. Okay. And so I found women to be much better. But we did this one job where our shop, we were the lead, me and the girls. I didn't have my whole girl shop there. I had 2 of my best girls with me. And I left them there to run the job because they had a much better idea than these morons who were, union electricians. So anyway, and see, I was a union rep I still wasn't a union rep, even though my shop was a union. I was still in the union at this time, and so I come back, and these guys, the girls have, you know, I there weren't cell phones, but I did have a beeper. So I got this little message saying, "We're at the coffee shop. The guys are real jerks, right?" So I go down and to the coffee shop, and they explain to me. They're not in tears or upset. They just said, "Fuck it, we left." And I said, they couldn't do that much harm because it's only been an hour. I mean, how much harm could they do, right? So I go up there, and so this was an old building that we were retrofitting with stuff, right? And they had wall sconces, and we were going to change them. And so I wanted them to take the old fixtures down and these wires were not new wires, and there wasn't pipe. It was BX, meaning armor cable, and it was rubber with canvas on it, but it was in great shape. It hadn't been burnt up. It was in great shape. Right? So I took one apart and I showed the girls and the guys how I wanted them to do it, right? And so, so the girls are down there, and I come up, and I always have a camera with me, right? I had my little throwaway camera. And see, this isn't my job, meaning I'm running this job for a union shop. And that's why these union guys are there. They just don't have the people, the experience or sensitivity for this very high classy job. So I'm doing a favor for the guy who owns the union thing, and his guys are there. And the girls were supposed to kind of keep, I said, these girls, just listen to what the girls say. They'll show you how to do it. Anyway, so the girls are down in the coffee shop. They explained to me what happened. It's only been an hour. I responded to the little, my little device, and I went up there, and these morons had taken the fixtures off and cut the cable right at the connector, right? And these were like 1920s candelabras that had crystal, right? And they threw them in the corner and smashed. Now, I was going to, they were, part of the deal was was going to keep all of those fixtures. And I had this other little business with a friend of mine who was an architect, where we would sell things like that to other designers. And I was going to sell each of those candelabras for $200. And these morons just ripped them out of the wall and threw them over the corner and smashed them up, right? And and they clipped the wires so you couldn't get at them. They just did it because it was easier just to, pull the fixture off and snip off the wires and throw them in the corner. And this other guy is like using a hammer drill, right? It's a hammer drill with reciprocating kind of hammer. And he was using it as a hammer, right? Because it said hammer on it. Anyway, so I go up there and I look around. I said, I can't believe it. I've been only going an hour, and you've just, did about $10,000 worth of damage. You're fired. Get out. You can't fire me. I'm a union electrician. Well, then leave the job site, period. You can't tell me what to do. It's our job. And I said, oh. So, I went over, called up their boss and explained what happened, and then handed the guy, and I can hear the guy screaming at him over the phone, "You're fired, go to the union shop, tell him, go sit on the bench, Anyway, so luckily, I'm a smart guy. I took my little needle nose pliers and I grabbed one of those little wires and I pulled it out about 2 inches, because usually in cable there's little give, and I could put a insulated end butt crimp on there. And So it wasn't like we were going to have to chop everything because when their boss came and started, we're going to have to chop this out and have to plaster it out. He was like losing his mind because he was like, because when I said to the guy, you just, in less than an hour, you've caused $10,000 worth of damage here. And so the, you know, and that's why this guy loved me because I said, "Oh, don't worry about it. I think I can fix this." And so we did that, and the fixtures, yeah, they threw them in the corner, but they didn't destroy them. They just messed them up. And so, I still got my $200 a fixture out of it. But that was the difference between men and women. You know, the guys were total morons, and three other jobs. This happened again. So we did another building where again another union because I had this specialty that I could do things that union shops wouldn't do, but I'm still a union guy and I was still a union rep, so I had like the juice to negotiate almost anything within the union structure, which is a talent, right? More than just being an electrician, I could get jobs done on time, on budget, right? And so when these guys I knew because I had been in the union for God, I started when I was like 14. Because to get a master electrician's license, you have to have 16 consecutive years of W-2 forms, and you have to have 8 years in the union. I don't know what it is today, but you have to have that. And that's because the unions want to control the electrical work in New York, other than concrete, is the most controlled, right? Anyway, so this other two jobs we worked on. So there was this building we were renovating, and we were putting a whole new service in, and we were bringing the risers up, and the union guys were doing that, putting the risers and putting the meter pins in. But to come from the vault out, out in the street into the building, this was like early Con Edison work, like the 1890s, right? And most Con Ed guys don't like doing it, and most union lecturers don't. They don't want to even touch it. So that was one thing I got really good at, and so that was one thing we were doing for this job. And the other thing we were doing was it was going to be a big time diamond jeweler kind of place. So there's going to be a lot of security, and all the doors and everything was going to be remote control, opened and closed, and so there was a lot of control work. And so anyway, we were working on that, and so it's unbelievable. We're in a basement, and where these guys are putting the risers, and there are these phone lines like going through the basement, and the big thick things. And I look at them, and they are fiber optic lines. And this is fiber optics is super new, and these guys don't even know what they are, right? But I kind of know what they are. And we are in the part of town where it's downtown, and it's near what is this building is the AT&T long lines, and it's like super duper, you know, NSA. It's like where NSA is tapping everyone's phone lines, and this is in the early '80s, right? And I had done a lot of microwave work for the contractor that built this building, so I had worked on that, so I kind of knew what it was. So this big, thick cable is going through the basement. These guys are putting in risers, and it's in their way. And their boss had called the phone company, "Hey, move this cable, move this cable, move this cable, move this cable." Anyway, these guys got tired of it, and so they just said, "Fuck it," and they just took a sawzall. I said, "God, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm an electrician. I'm local 3. I can do whatever the heck I want." I said, "Come on, girls, we're out of here." So we, go out, and we go across the street into this little bar, and we got a table by the window. And I said, we're just going to wait. We're not going to be in that building. What happened? I said, well, these morons are cutting a phone line, and it's a fiber optic line. And we're in a neighborhood where the super duper secret place is. And the only place that fiber optic line is probably going is in that place. So I don't want to be in that building. If that is true, every kind of national security, everything is going to be there like that. Because as soon as they cut that thing, it's like their line is going to be dead. And. So man, as soon as we get our sandwiches and cocktails, and we're watching this, oh man, the FBI, the FCC, the NSA, you name it, and they beat the ever living crap out of those guys because the cable was on the floor, and when those guys showed up, they said, "We're local 3. We could," they had an attitude towards them, but we're gonna give us attitude, and they threw the book at those guys. They went to San Quentin, right? And the guy who I was working for, he was he got a lot of static for that, right? So I told him, I said, that's it, because it was his job, not mine. We were just being nice, It's New York, everything's on the arm. My hand watches your hand. So I would do a lot of jobs like that, just so the union guys wouldn't bother us. But they would give us a hard time. When I worked on the World Trade Center, right? And they built the World. I mean, if they built the World Center like they built other buildings, they'd still be building it today. But they built most of the World Trade Center, the towers, were built in factories, and they stuck it together like a Tonka toy, and so they had miles of pipe. Everything was galvanized, which is pretty hard to bend. And so Greenlee, which is the company, electrical tool company, has this pneumatic bender, right? And you put the pipe on this table, and you want to have, a 90 and a 45 and a 30 over here. You can do that, right? And it's all in math. And they have these little dials at the front, and they have these little metal things, and you first take this equation, and then it's on each piece of pipe is 10 foot tall, long, and the pipe, the table is 10 foot long, and they have these pneumatic rods that stick up that you put, depending on the size of the pipe, you put these shoes on there, and then you set them where you want the bend, and you set these little knobs that says at what angle to the other angle, and you have to be able to think inside out. And that was really when, that was my first union job. I was like probably 17, and real job. I was doing other stuff. I'd been in the union for a year or so as an apprentice, but I was working, for Grandpa Stoll and Mike. So I was their apprentice. And so when I showed up at the World Trade Center, instead of just running wires and stuff, this guy who I knew, because I kind of not only apprenticed at our shop, I used to have to go to apprentice training, and I went in the summer, and I met the head guy of their engineering department for the IBEW, and he was head of the training, summer school. Anyway, I already knew everything. I had already been doing it for like 5 years. And so, he needed a couple extra teachers. So he says, "You want to, I'll call you a tutor. I won't call you a teacher. And you can tutor these guys on theory and code." I said, "Sure, glad to do it." And so he made extra money because these companies, because he was a union guy, he would get these technologies, brought into the service. So when they built the World Trade Center, if they had to bend all that pipe the way they normally did. It would have taken them for years, but they had this machine, but they had nobody to figure it out. So the Green League guy was there, and he showed me how to do it, right? And there were about 10 guys there who were supposed to also learn how to do it, but they couldn't, right? So they said, okay, Al, that's all you're going to do. So for about 6 months on the World Trade Center, all I did was, every time we go up a floor, I'd set up my little table there and have the laborers bring in the pipe, and I would have this cut sheet of how many 10 foot this diameter that, and I lined them up, and it was like an assembly line. I would just knock them out, right? And of the 21,000 workers that worked on the World Trade Towers, there was only one woman, and she was also an IBEW person, and nobody would work with her. So I said, sure, come, help me with this. I'll show you how to do it. And she was very smart, and she learned how to do it. And then when my boss wanted me to do something else other than work on the World Trade Center, he just wanted me there to experience that kind of a job and get time in the union. And doing that job and teaching that woman how to do it. And she was young too. She was, they get you young. She was 17, and she became quite, powerful hierarchy of because electrical work is good for women. It's something that women can do. It's not you don't have to be burly to do this, and so. What is your opinion? Okay, let's do this. Finland's female government birth rate is declining. Let's see, I heard Hillary's a reptile. Yes, hey there, Lay. Do you think the Clintons really had a guy? Well, like I said, they murdered a lot of people. I mean, all of those guys. So I never went into any of that stuff. It is so icky. Where are you from? New York City. I'm a New York City boy. Asking Sophia where she's from. Yeah, where are you from, So? Are you male or female? Sofa. I thought with the A, that's a female. Let's see. Wait. How old are you? Let's see. Guessing born after age 34 and hard to point out where thou MGTOW type. What the heck is that? Please respect my boundaries that I don't communicate with females. What the heck is MGTOW? I have to agree with you. You're more female than I will ever be. Let's see. No problem to keep talking to yourself until the end of time. Love you, Lena. You're the best. You make me laugh. Let me see. Not communicate with men, no problem. You should never, ever do it either. Keep eliminate yourself. She may give me, so I say, be no longer illegal. So else with. I love humans. A perfect example of why men don't interact with women if they couldn't help it, though. Buddy, I'm trying to explain how women are a lot easier to, interact with than guys. I mean, I can interact with anybody, except morons, and morons is not specific to a gender, but guys have much, they have so much more practice, Lena, I love you, baby. You make me laugh. You make me laugh so hard I cry. Let's see. Just keeping a perfect example. So, yep. See, I don't judge anybody. If you do stupid shit, just get out of my face. And see, the thing is, I don't judge people. So those morons who kept that cable and then got beat the crap out and thrown in prison, I may not have to tell them anything. When they picked up the sawzall and went to cut, I said, wait, don't do that. What do you mean, don't do that? I said, well, don't do that. That's what's why I brought up. I said, don't. We're local 3. We can do whatever we want. I said, okay. And that's when I said, come on, girls, we're out of here. And we went across the street and watched those morons do it. Here's another great thing Local 3 did. So, like I said, they only that whole job on, the World Trade Center. My best friend was a lesbian electrical worker, right? And my partner, here's another, when I worked for the Housing Authority of New York, right? And they wanted, they made me a policeman. I didn't have any training, and really what happened was, I helped put together this housing authority, and we took over all these abandoned buildings and put 500 families in them, and we fought the city to the point where they said, okay, Uncle, we'll let you do that, but you have to put it under the New York City Housing Authority. And I said, fine, good, no problem. And so when we did that, they said, okay, you have to work for us now. And I said, fine, good, I'll do that. And then they, sent me there, and there was no real bureaucratic fit for what we did and how we did it into their thing. So the only place they could stick me was in the New York City Housing Authority Police, right? And because one of our larger chunks of abandoned buildings was right next to one of their big, housing, things that they built during the Depression, these 14, 15-story houses. I forgot what it was called. It was on Houston Street, it was actually on 16th Street, over on near the Con Ed power plant along the FDR Drive. And now it's really rich people condos. They kicked the working class out and put rich people, made them condos. But anyway, and my partner was this redheaded Irish Puerto Rican who was one of the first female Delta, and she was such a kick-ass killer soldier, Amazon, that the male soldiers were scared of her. So instead of putting her into a platoon, they made her a top sergeant and put her in the training scene, right? And so she did the training. And so she got tired of that because she wasn't going to go anywhere. And so, she became a cop. Yeah. And so all the people in the New York City Housing Authority were scared of her. So they stuck her with me. And we were like, it was like Forrest Gump and Jenny, but Jenny as a merc, and I was Forrest Gump. And how it worked was, so, we supposed to wear uniforms and carry a gun and billy club and flashlight and radio. Not me. I wore shorts and, Hawaiian shirt and, cowboy hat and, flip-flops and mirrored sunglasses. And she wore the uniform, right? She was totally military. And one time we had to go to court, and New York City police could go into courtrooms with their guns, but housing authority, we had to leave our weapons at the door. Well, I never carried a weapon, and we were the ultimate good cop, bad cop. And when something was going on, and we took care of 4 buildings, each one had like 200 apartments in it. And so, there were like 1,200 people there that we were supposed to keep safe, and, just two people. And we get on the radio and call for people, for backup. But so, I basically said, listen, good cop, bad cop, we'll walk around. You look mean, I'll look funny, right? I'll talk to everybody. And, I think we can work this out. So that's how we rolled. And there was always a lot of drugs being sold, a lot of, arguments, a lot of people carrying metal, and in the summertime, things would pop off. So I only worked at that job 8 months because I got shot, and my second wife died, so I was a little depressed. So I kept pushing the envelope, and I was pushing the envelope too much, but it was good because it stopped. That's where I got my rule of three. A doctor do no harm. Don't get involved unless you can have a positive outcome and get the innocents out of harm's way. And that's mostly what we did. And, I wouldn't get involved unless I could learn something. And I did that. And, I would be the first through the door. I remember one time this guy was going to shoot it. It was really hot. And they turned off his electricity. He lost his job. His wife left him. He had 3 crying kids. And a shotgun, and he was going to shoot the kids and then off himself, right? So it comes over our radio, and I'm, we're going to go respond to this, and the police weren't going to show up. I mean, it was just they had a 12, 13, or whatever it was. I never knew the code. She did. And it was, house disturbance, not like, this guy's going to shoot the kids, it's just house disturbance. So didn't even say weapons, just house disturbance, like an argument, right? So it's really hot. And I'm thinking, So I go, wait a minute. And I go into the bodega and I get 2 tall boys, 6-packs, I said, you got a garbage bag? He goes, yep. I put them in there, and I put a whole bunch of ice on top of them, and I put another garbage bag, and I'm like, like Santa Claus going in with a bag. So I say, you stay in the hallway, I'm going in. I go in, and I got this bag with me, and there he is. And I'm wearing, lime green shorts and, Hawaiian shirt and, flip-flops and a cowboy hat, and he looks at me. I have no gun. I have no radio. I have no nothing. But my partner is out by the door, right? And the door is open because there's no air conditioning, and he's got the windows and the door open, and the kids are screaming, and he's got the shotgun, and he's got him pointed right at the kids, right? And I go, hey, how you doing? And he looks up at me. He goes, who are you? And I said, it's pretty hot, isn't it? He goes, yeah. And I take a super ice cold beer out of the bag and pop the top and hand it to him. And he's just like, wow, sucks. That's the best beer I ever had. Well, that's pretty good because I got another 32 in here. So he pops 3 right away, right? And by the time he goes for the 4th, he hands me the shotgun. He goes, here, give me the bag. Hold my gun for me. I said, no problem. So, I sit down next to him. I take the shells out of the gun, and it's a shotgun that comes in 2 pieces. So I take the shells out and take it apart and put, the part that has the trigger part over here and the barrel part over there. So, and then I take the box of gun shells away from him, just keep feeding him beers and talking to him. And I said, those kids, they're just so noisy. Why don't we just tell them to go out and play? Yeah, kids, get out. So the kids went out. And by this time, she's called for backup. And so social services there. And so the kids, get taken out. And we're still talking. I said, you know who I am. He said, I have no idea. Who are you? I said, well, I am, the police. He goes, you're the police? I said, yes, I'm the police. Because you don't look like a police. But the only thing I would have is my little badge. So some other policeman wouldn't shoot me, So out of my pocket, I say, see, I'm the police, right? And he goes, wow, you're cool. You don't have a gun. You don't have a radio. All you have is a big bear of ice cold beer. I said, it's what was needed, right? You feel much better, don't you? So, yep. And, I've had 2, he's had 12. And I said, listen, you know, I think what we need to do, your kids are out there with social services, they're safe, right? And I'm going to walk you out of here. I'm not going to handcuff you. I'm going to walk you out, and I'm going to walk you out of the building, and my partner's out there, and she will protect you, you know? She will protect you from those other morons, right? And we will take you down into our car, and we will drive you downtown to be arraigned, and I'll stay with you all the way through it. I'll make sure you get a lawyer, and I will explain to the judge exactly what is. Now, you're going to do some time, that's obviously for sure, but, you know, no one's going to hurt you. No one's going to beat you up. No one's going to treat you bad. I'm going to make sure this, So we both got a big plaque for that and pats on the back. And we did that, another 12 times. But this other time, so we got to know everyone. And everyone was scared of her and happy to see me. And we were the best of teams. And she was great. And she was, she was everything, She liked girls, she liked boys, she liked everything. She liked beating. She was like Fight Club. I remember one time we were at a bar, and when she dressed up, now when she put on a dress, she was a hot girl. I'll have to dig some pictures up of her, and she loved to dance. And I had a friend of mine. There was a ballroom, you know, that wasn't like a disco, but it was a ballroom, but it had every kind of music, and we would go dancing there on Friday nights. And then Saturday night, I wired a thing called Danceteria that had been back in the 1890s, it had been a department store. It was about 5 or 6 stories high. They had the old, elevators, that looked like bird cages that these girls, would run. And one floor was like one kind of, so we would go there. And she loved the fact that I still worked on discos and I could walk in any disco. And so, she loved to dance and she loved Chinese food. And I knew all these dim sum we were just the best of partners. And so we were police partners that had benefits because she loved sex, with girls or guys or, whoever. And again, it's just like the topic of this story is, take me home and kiss me like you really mean it. And, so, we depended on each other to keep each other safe, because we were in a very this housing project was pretty dangerous. But because we would walk up, she is wearing the body armor uniform. I mean, she was like military. She got the most military stuff from the thing, and then she went and bought stuff, that was military. So she was like, if anyone even thought of making any trouble, she was going to kill them all. I remember. So we went to this court case, right? And I obviously have no weapons. I'm wearing shorts and a Hawaiian shirt and cowboy hat, and she's got everything. It took her 20 minutes. She had like 50 knives, 10 guns, you know, 3 tasers, every nuclear weapon, she had this pile of weapons at this desk, and the guy was just like, he had to get 4 boxes. So we were a very odd couple, and like I said, nobody in our department wanted to work with her. She had so much trouble, because she was one of the only women. I mean, there were women, in the office, but nobody was on the street. Nobody was carrying a gun. No one was doing what we were doing. And so I would be the nice cop. And so we would walk into places that we knew were selling drugs. I mean, big weight. And, And we would go and say, hey, you can't do this in the building. You want to do it over there? You want to do it, over on 6th Street? You want to go, over by the river? Not a problem. But you can't, because there are tons of kids here. There's a school over there. I mean, what was your daughter? What it was your sister? That's how I would talk to him about it. And she spoke Spanish. Like I said, she was Irish, Puerto Rican. So anyway, we were a great team. And because we did a number of, like when we did that thing with the guy with the shotgun, a lot of people, we got a lot of respect for that because we didn't go in there like with the SWAT team and traumatize everyone. We did it, with a plastic bag of, 12 tall boys. And we did a number of things like that. And we never arrested anybody. Never, never, never. I mean, we did that guy. I mean, things like that, yes. But we would take them in our car and take them all the way, to be, processed. And I'd stay with them, especially guys like that. So we got a lot of, and we would play with the kids. She was really good with basketball. She was a killer basketball player. So these guys would play the basketball and she would like take off her armor and like be on her t-shirt, and she was well built. And she would just muscle these guys, knock them over, So we were a great team until I got shot. And that was it. Because, we kept pushing the envelope. My boss kept saying, Al, we would get these awards, and then he would take us in the office and say, Al, you got to stop pushing. You got to be, we have rules for a reason. I said, well, you guys made a mistake hiring me. I was running this housing thing over here, and that's all I wanted to do. And then to get you to lay off of them, I had to go work for you. So here I am. So you're going to get me the way I am. That's the way it is. Sorry. But we had taken the crime rate out of his district like precipitously. And so he got all the credit. And so he was like, he would say, oh, you got to stick to the protocols. But then he said, well, keep doing it because you're really making me look good. But when I got shot, that was it. That was and it was a miraculous shot. I got shot. See that scar right on my hand? Right. Let's see, right here. I grabbed, it was two gangs, and they were fighting over turf, and they were in this one guy's apartment, and there were like 5 moms and about 12 kids and about 6 guys with automatic weapons, and, Mac 10s and cheap Uzis. And basically, this guy got pissed off. We were there. We came in the middle of this argument where it was like at 40, and it was quickly going to 100. And at about 80 is when bullets were going to start to fly. And the kids were everywhere, still running. I mean, the kids and moms, these guys are always yelling. So they did not read that this was going to end up in a gunfight with automatic weapons, because automatic weapons were always all over the coffee tables. The kids were picking them up. And I mean, not a good scene. And drugs everywhere. Anyway, so, and this was one set of gangs that were okay until they started to compete with each other. And then they were trying to out macho. Anyway, so it was right at the hiatus of the macho stupidness. And again, this is showing the difference between men and women. And men being total morons and women at least trying to be mothers. So, we walk in, again, my partner is out in the hallway, with her machine gun ready to come in. And she actually had, this Dutch machine gun, but it was a small rifle. I mean, wasn't like a Mac-10. It was a very precise. I mean, she could be very precise with that gun. But anyway, we used to go shoot on the range, and that was another thing she loved. She said, "You actually know how to shoot a gun?" I said, "Yes, I know how to shoot a gun. I just don't like them." So anyway, um, I walk in. She's at the door. They know that she's there, and she's got her body armor, but she has no weapons drawn. But they know that she's like an armory, and so this guy goes for his gun, and I put my hand up like this, right? Now, if I put my hand up, I mean, I put my hand not this way, but the other way, right? In a very uncomfortable way. But if I put my hand up like that, it would have blown off my thumb. But because I grabbed it the other way when he shot it, all it did, the bullet came out and zinged across my palm and cut my palm. And it actually burnt my palm. Um, and luckily, it didn't hit any bones or any veins or any nerves. It just, tore up the flesh of my palm. So I have that very strange little scar there. And it bled like a pig, So blood everywhere, which freaked them all out, And then I kind of played it like, I grabbed a gun, it went off. Luckily, it was on single shot, not automatic, because that would have been pretty messy. And I kind of fell down and what burnt my hand the most was that I held on to the barrel and took it out of his hand and then played dead. And there was blood everywhere, right? So everyone freaked out. And that's when she came in with not guns blazing, but, if anyone, she had this very scary Dutch automatic weapon. And, if anyone even had thought of shooting another bullet. And she could have just bang, 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 not sprayed the place, but she was quite good. Like I said, she was a total merc. And so there's a woman, a totally womanly woman. I mean, the most feminine, sexy girl in a dress you could find, but super duper killer, unbelievable professional, and someone who I every day for 8 months trusted my life to. And so I have a ton of stories of that matter, right? And I have a lot of stories of guys who had the same, relation, closeness with. And I love men too, not sexually. I'm very much a platonic lover, right? Women, yes, I'm very physical with women. I like being physical with women, but I love, guys are my, I'm their buds, right? Uh, uh, I love you, Lena. A perfect example of what uh, one men going their own way. That is so interesting. Uh, uh, does that mean that you're gay, beautiful, by the way, or that you're just hang with men being men? Must be hard, though. I couldn't do it. I just hanging with myself would be like Einstein said, doing the same thing is crazy. Yep. But yet, do the same thing every time and expecting a different outcome. That's what's crazy. If you do the same thing um, over and over again, you're just neurotic. It's the expectation of that same thing being different. That makes you nuts. Me and my friend, metal detect, treasure hunt, and have had some good points. Yeah, that I had an uncle who was really into that. He was very good at that. He was also a good dowser. He taught me how to douse. Have you ever try at your own time? Yep. I've done that. On man, so she would probably play the victim. You know, I find men play the victim more than women. Women don't, um, women are more clear cut and cutthroat than they have to because guys are just little bitches, really. Uh, I demand her. Oh, she would probably play the victim. I said, well, I have a metal detector, but the male I was with thought it was stupid. Well, he's stupid. Anybody who thinks anything is stupid is basically stupid. There's this my favorite psychotherapist, you know, guy who breaks ground is Freud. Thought everything was sex. What's his name? Thought everything was a collective unconscious. And Kant, the French Freud, his thing was whenever anyone says, "You know what your problem is," they're talking about themselves. Right? Let's see. Let's see. Well, let's about. I heard all of you have this worst, and everybody actually is the same. Yes, pretty much everyone is the same. It's like, man, the humanity is like Mr. Potato Head, right? Everyone has a potato head, and there's 5 different eyes, 5 different noses, 5 different mouths, 5 different ears. That's about it, right? It's obvious that everybody actually is the same, and playing the victim is good when you meet a bear. Yeah, that's like rock, paper, scissors. Yeah. I have a bear in the deep green, and she's very sweet in that there's a river between me and her, and she could cross it pretty easily. And I have my compost pile on her side, right? And she's very good because she kind of goes through and mixes. I'd have to be mixing the compost pile, but she does it for me, looking for what she wants to eat. And the fact that I put it over there where she likes to hang out, she's very respectful. So she doesn't come over and like eat me. She just stays over there. And when she has little kids, they play in the water and they get fish out of the river, and it's very pleasant to watch. And they're close enough, but far enough away where they never quite come over. And the nice thing that they do, the one little creature that bothers me in my campsite are raccoons, and they eat the raccoons. So they're very nice. And I also have feral cats, and they're more like bobcats than people's house cats put outside. They're like woods cats, and they're very cool too. They also go after the raccoons and the mice, and so I kind of I don't quite feed them, but I let them hang out um, under one of my sheds, right? And when they have kittens, they do live there because they have a den they built, and the kittens come out and play with me, and they're kind of fun. And the moms let it, they don't get, you know, I mean, they're wild cats. They could like tear me up if they wanted to. I haven't addressed you since I told you out of courtesy why I wasn't responding. Women like you are why MGTOWs exist. I hate the men going to own what Uh, it's interesting how the human body is severed is, yeah, we're bags of water. Yep. And so, as you see all around us, yep, and we go out to space to find life and all whatever it has no words yet, and we still can't reach the sea. Yep, pretty much. Yep. I love, when why I loved living in Ireland is that it's an island, and it's got a coast, all water all around it, and I love the west coast of Ireland. Yeah, I know it's okay. I respect that. Also, I exist, and you can keep your ism because all isms will keep you safe. It's a safe feeling, yeah, but it's also very limiting. Isms are very limiting. You're not learning anything. You're not growing. The only reason we exist is to expand, you know, our free will's consciousness, right? But being an ism, you're not going to expand your free will's consciousness at all, you know. So it's interesting. Um, I worked for Woody Allen on a movie, Broadway, Danny Rose, and only parts of it that they shot in New York. I didn't work on the whole thing. And he's kind of a nebbishy guy. I mean, smart guy. He's kind of funny, but he's not funny around people. He writes, he writes funny, and I like his movies. He's a good movie maker, and I like what he gets out of his actors. It's just his energy, and that's another problem. I I read people so well, so it's hard for me to work in environments where you'd have to be there for years and years because I just tell people what I see in them, and most people don't like. It's okay when people pay me a lot of money to do it. Then they feel okay about it. But if I'm just hanging with them and they're not my friend or they don't know me too well, um, because all my friends actually like me because I tell them the truth. I'm like and I have lots of different friends, and that's another thing that people who hang with me who aren't really my friends, they will go, "Why do you hang out with that person? They're such a jerk." Well, that person is so judgmental, they don't see the good sides of that person, right? I had a friend of mine in Asheville, and she was a bitch, and she could, really be tedious to be with, but she was so much fun, and she could, anybody who can dance, I love to dance. And she played the accordion and the fiddle, and she wouldn't do it unless you got her a little drunk and then really got her to do it, and then she'd go wild and have a great old time. Her biggest boring problem was that she was, a Virgo, so she was always right. Now, she wasn't a smart Virgo, so she basically was wrong most of the time. She was one of the only Virgos I knew who was wrong, right? And and that's because she came from a rich family and was spoiled, so she never really had to deal with reality, right? Because her parents always paid her bills, and she never really had to work. And she did work. She liked doing stuff, and she did. She did. Um, she was an actress, and where when we lived in Asheville, she wasn't much and she didn't. People didn't. She couldn't act with. I had theater groups in Asheville. I did theater there and some really interesting stuff. We had a playwrights theater where there were these people who wrote plays and we performed them, and they were actually pretty good. And this girl was so judgmental of everything that I said, "Oh, good, just, you don't have to be part of that, right?" But dancing and getting drunk and playing music, she was loads of fun. So, but people, why do you want to hang out with her? She's, just, rah, rah. I said, well, and the other reason I hung out with her, she had two little kids that if she had no one to like hang out with, she would have really twisted those kids more than she twisted them, right? So I just mostly stayed with her just so I could be the mediating factor between her and her kids, at least until they could get old enough to get out of the house, which they did. And, their rich grandpa put them through college and they, did pretty good with their careers. And they're freaking in their 40s by now. It's like amazing how time flies, you know? I mean, those kids were, I mean, one of those kids. So, so I've done all this stuff, right? And she goes, "Oh, you didn't do that." And then, like, we, I worked on farms. I had been out, in New Mexico building earth ships with this Italian architect who, started that idea. Anyway, so there was this, sustainable farm, right? And I had been at the farm in Tennessee. And so this guy, I knew this guy from then, which was like the 60s. Anyway, she wanted to go to this guy's farm, right? And so I knew this guy and I knew where his farms were. And so she had all the instructions. And so she wanted me to go with him. So we went and she got totally lost, right? And she was relatively close to it, but she just kept going. And I said, and she got really frustrated, went to the gas station. She had a fight with her husband. And I said, listen, you guys, you sit in the front, you sit in the back, I will drive. I know where it is. Right there. She goes, how did you know where it was? And I said, because I've been here before. And she goes, well, why did you? I said, I told you about 10 times that I knew this guy. Well, you don't know him. Anyway, so we go there and he's giving the tour and she is like the one who's telling him what sustainability is about. He's like wrote the book. And I say something to him and she goes, oh, don't listen to him. He doesn't know anything. And he turns to her and says, I've known this guy 15 years. He is one of the smartest people I know. I would trust him with my life. And you get the fuck out of my farm. And she was like, and so her husband and her kids wouldn't, she had to go off into the parking lot and sit in the car, right? That's what the guy, he like walked her over and put her in the car. And that's what she would do. We must have been brother and sister in another life and she kept doing this in places with people who I have known for a long time and worked with them and done things. And there was this lecture that we went to where this guy lectured, and I lived with him in New Mexico. I helped him, do earth houses when he was designing them, and when he came to give a lecture at this college about it, and I was like, at this college as a professor, and she would go on about, oh, he doesn't know anything, because she didn't read a book, she didn't know anything, right? And that's what people do all the time when they judge people. They don't even come from a point of understanding. So people would ask me, how can you, this lady is so, I said, well, I really kind of, her husband I like, and her kids. So I delivered one of her kids because she was, I'm going to have a midwife and I'm going to give birth in a a swimming pool, and it'll be all of this unbelievable bullshit. And she goes, I want you to film it for me because I was the big video guy in that town. I worked for the rich guy who owned half of the town. He was a very interesting guy, and I was I got into actual doing all this demographic. Historical studies of the Biltmore House in the city of Asheville. And so, what was that guy's name? Julian Price, right? So I was his videographer. Anyway, so she wanted me to video her birth. So I said, okay. And first I said, no, you don't want me to do that. And she goes, what do you mean? I said, well, you don't want a video of the birth of your child. That's too personal. And she didn't understand what I was talking about when I said too personal, because there's a lot of blood and you got your legs spread open and it's too, right? But hey, you want me to do it? Not a problem. Just stick the camera on a tripod, zoom in on your squat and just hit record and go in the kitchen and have a cup of coffee. I don't need to look through the viewfinder. And so anyway, the woman who was her midwife knew nothing about it. She just did it to take the money. The kid will pop out in the water and that'll be fine. Blah blah blah. Right? But she had no. Well, I had, lived with the old crone. She was her midwife. I had been her doula. The assistant. Right. Then I had a girlfriend in New York who was a doctor and a midwife, and she was one of the only doctors in New York City that was, legally could deliver a child at home, right? And I was her doula. So I had a lot of experience, of delivering babies. So when this woman freaked out and ran away, and she had no license, no insurance, no nothing, but this my friend gave her a lot of money to deliver her baby at home, and then she screwed up. And luckily, I had in my car, I was being an electrician then, so I had bags of tricks, for different jobs. And when I do electronic stuff, there's some fine stuff. So I had some, hemostats. So what happened was this woman tore my friend's uterus, and not the uterus from the wall, but a vein. So my friend was actually bleeding out. So I went, luckily, I had my little, things of, so I pour alcohol on my hemostat. It wasn't really funky. It was a relatively new hemostat. And I clipped off that little vein that was bleeding. And I called 911, and the, paramedics showed up. And I told them exactly what happened. I had a video of it too. And so they took her straight to the hospital, and and they deliver the baby and they sew her up. And so we're in there, and the doctor tells my friend that, your friend here, he is really an amazing guy because he saved your life. What do you mean he saved my life? What did he do? And he goes, well, if he hadn't clamped off that little vein in your uterus, you would have bled out right there in your living room. But no, he didn't, and that's what she would do. All the freaking people couldn't believe that she would do that. But two things, A, I liked her when she was a little bit drunk and would dance and play music. That was loads. She could be loads of fun, and I would like it when she was loads of fun, right? And I really cared for her kids, especially her son that I delivered. I was his godfather, and her daughter, right? And uh, you know the husband, right? And and he's a lot like what's his the character Sofa there, in that he was the victim, right? And the wife was always the antagonist. And anyway, once the kids got old enough, once the girl graduated college and the boy, he left. He left at 17. He finished high school and just hit the road. And once the kids hit the road, that was it. I left those two at their own because they both came from really rich families, and both their families died at the same time, and they inherited between the two of them, they inherited $8 million, right? And what was truly amazing is that these two went through that $8 million in 2.5 years. It's like, what? And the other, do you guys know what Freudenscheide is? It's a German psychological term for when people are being really stupid and you observe them being stupid, you kind of get a kind of glee out of their self-inflicted suffering. And these people were the highest level of that, So, when she would go on and on about, no, he didn't do that. Oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. She would do it in front of people who knew me and who experienced me doing that same thing that she said, oh, he doesn't know anything about. Um, and I don't know why, but a lot of people, she wasn't the only person who would say that. When I lived in the valley and I was really sick, and I would spend a lot of time in this uh, really nice library that had a coffee shop in it. And the head librarian liked me, and because I would talk to people and help people. So she actually set up a little circle of really nice lounge chairs that I could sit at and, you know, work on my computer, and people would come and talk to me. And she liked that. She liked there was like the old sage in her library. And there were a bunch of retired guys who would come to the library like me and have breakfast there. And they would, I would sit there and they would kind of saunter in and sit and talk to me. And they were a very interesting group of guys. And one was a salesman who was a lot like my father. He was in the military and then he became a salesman and did very well. And, so I could relate to him. He was a lot like my dad. But he wasn't as old as my dad. He was like my brother's age. And there's another guy. There was two guys who are professors. There's one guy who is a computer programmer. There was one guy who was a NSA spy. And I could just, so all of these guys, I met them individually. There was a lawyer who was, he was a young guy and he was studying for his bar. So that's why he was in the library all the time. And there was two doctors. And there was this one doctor who, he was black and his parents were high school teachers. And he was a smart kid. And he grew up right at the height, like in the 70s, where he got to go to a super duper prestigious prep school that had been all white, and then they had became, let a few blacks in. And he was, his parents weren't poor, but they, they're school teachers. They weren't rich, but they saw education as the top thing. So he's and they like, were smart. So they had him play tennis in high school, like before high school. So that prestigious white prep school, he was a really good tennis player. So they said, well, he's good for a tennis team and he's a smart kid. So he went there, and then he went to UVM, and then he went to some pretty prestigious medical, uh, school, and became a surgeon, right? Heart surgeon, right? So he thought he knew everything. He was top of the heap. He was, and he was basically put black people down. Look, I made it, so I'm a white guy, and that's really what he saw himself as a white guy. Anyway, so he would sit in the circle. He thought he knew everything, and he retired at 50. Right? He said, I could have worked another, but I made a lot of money doing that, and then I invested in the stock market, and I know everything. And he was very right wing. He was very much a neoconservative, right? And he was all of that, and he had no idea what it was. He never had read any of the political scientists. He had read a lot of right wing, almost neo-Nazi. He was a big when Twitter started. He was Mr. Twitter. Anyway, so he stumbled into our little circle, and I would be talking about stuff, and he goes, "Oh, you're wrong. You're so wrong. You don't know what you're talking about." And he had the best of everything. So he had his iPhone. I said, well, go Google that. And he Googled it, and oh my God, you're right. And so for at least, I don't know, 6 months to a year, everything I said was wrong. And I said, well, go Google that. And he Googled it. Oh my God, you're right. So it got to a point where he begrudgingly became my friend because I never rubbed it in his face. I never pushed anything. We'd have these conversations, and he would go, and he wouldn't say, "Oh, you're wrong." He would look at his Google and just kind of go, "Ugh." So he then started coming to me, asking me because he was getting involved in politics, and the Tea Party was forming, and he was becoming part of the team. So he wanted to, have my opinion on the geopolitical thing of it. And he would bring interesting guys from the Tea Party to come and talk with us in our little circle. And at one point, what happened was that area, of Virginia, the Roanoke Valley, was one of the places where the Tea Party started, and so it was like Boston and the Tea Party. And they used to go first Thursday of every month. They would have these meetings over at the Holiday Inn, right? They have these conference, these ballrooms, and they had, 70 people in there. And I started going to them, and they had these two guys that, I worked in politics. They were political operatives, right? And they were like pretending that they were, people of the street. But no, they were paid. I mean, who was paying to rent that ballroom, the first Thursday of every month, and had all this stuff printed out and flyers and signs and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so I went to these things, and he would come to them too. I mean, he brought me to them. That's how I knew about him. And I started talking to the guys who, were running it. And, I've been around the political scene a good deal, and I knew what a political operative was. And so, I said, so you guys, just was me and them. I said, oh, you're political operatives. So, and who was paying them but the Koch brothers, right? They were fitting the bill. And, it was, anyway, so he was upset when I, told them what was going on. And then he, went and said, so you guys aren't, and they said, no, this is all business. Come on, this is what politics is. And it like blew his mind that it was all about power, money, and control, and not his ism that he thought it was, right? MGTOW. It's not an ism. Toxic woman. All right. Epidemic these days. Jesus. This guy must not get laid. So, by your own definition, breaking free of their abuse and living for oneself is a stupidity. Ay, ay, ay. Well, we will all see then when the show ends. Yep. Ay, vey. What time is it? Oh, almost 1 a.m. Well, if you guys got nothing else to say, Lena, I'll see you in dream time, sweetie. I'm gonna go to bed now. So what time's it there? It must be what? Early morning where you are? So it's like 1 a.m. here. So it's what is it? 5 hours different. So it's like 6, 7 where you are, Lena. Anyway. Like I said, just take me home and kiss me like you mean it. Unable to continue the chat. Please try again later. Well, for that, I'm going to go. So I'll see you in the morning or in the afternoon or sometime tomorrow. Love you guys. I have some things earlier in the morning to do. Probably have to get out of here at 9-ish. Go do my things and probably be back by 2. So maybe I'll do something around 4 or 5 tomorrow. Okay? Okay.